Perfectionism is often thought of as a positive thing, holding yourself to a high standard or trying to strive for excellence. The problem is that perfectionism often accomplishes the opposite and demotivates us and makes us less willing to try new things. While high standards are great to have, perfectionism becomes a problem when it manifests as an intolerance of failure. An intolerance of failure usually leads to risk aversion, which prevents personal growth. This is because it makes it very hard to try anything new when the perceived risk is so high of making any mistakes on something that you're not experienced with. Any activity then is perceived as a risk to self-esteem rather than an opportunity for growth or development. When I first wanted to try woodworking, I remember being afraid to start because I knew that my first product wasn't going to meet my standards. I knew that I wouldn't think it was good enough, and I would feel like I had wasted all of that time and energy invested into trying out the new project. I figured I might as well just go and buy a finished product rather than try to make it myself and make something that I wasn't going to be happy with. The mistake that I was making there was having the mindset that I couldn't improve. This was just something that I wasn't good at, and I knew I wasn't going to be happy with the product, but that mindset was preventing me from ever trying at all. This was a task that I could get better at with practice, but I was afraid of even starting because of that initial hesitation of making something that I knew I wouldn't be happy with. I was correct in that my first product wouldn't be that good, but I was also preventing myself from ever trying and making the necessary mistakes that would have to be made in order to improve over time. I let that fear stop me from pursuing a hobby for a long time just because I was afraid of disappointment and failure. Once I realized that failure and mistakes were necessary, and a lot of this came from actually talking to people who did this for a living, and I realized that mistakes are just part of the process and that this happens to everyone, then I became more comfortable trying it out, understanding that even the pros make mistakes sometimes and it's okay for that to happen. It's just part of the experience. From there, I shifted my mindset away from expecting perfection on the first try and more just toward incremental growth, which would inevitably lead to progress over time. Perfectionism can also be a problem in deal-making and compromising. There's the old saying, don't let perfection be the enemy of good, and it's true. A lot of times people are unwilling to make compromises, especially if they view those compromises as somehow at odds with their moral values, say in politics. A lot of times deal-making in politics or in groups is viewed as intolerable because making a compromise might go against some sort of core value. The problem there is that it often prevents us from doing anything at all, and a lot of times meaningful progress is hindered by being unwilling to consider other options, which might get us closer to that end goal, but just because there's not seen as the perfect outcome, a lot of times we don't even consider trying. Despite the clear logical contradiction, a lot of times people are more comfortable just not doing anything rather than making progress or settling for something good rather than something perfect. This is very similar to my woodworking project where I didn't want to try it at all because I didn't think it would be perfect. Instead, I learned to accept that it wasn't going to be perfect, but that it would at least be progress towards the end goal of getting good eventually. Keep that in mind when trying to make a decision or make a compromise with another group. Think about the end goal and what steps could get you closer to that, even if it involves making a compromise with somebody else or settling for less than the perfect outcome. A lot of times that can still be meaningful progress towards an overall long-term goal. Perfectionists will usually see disappointment everywhere. When perfect is the expected result, that leaves a very large window of potential disappointment below that expected result and a very small window of potential surprise over an unexpectedly good outcome above your expectations. When viewed that way, perfectionism is a major risk to self-esteem because you're almost never going to achieve the end result that makes you feel happy or satisfied with what you achieved. This can lead to anxiety, low self-esteem, and low life satisfaction. And especially with social media and constant comparison with others, it's very hard to avoid that feeling of inadequacy and underperformance. The way around this, though, is to compare yourself to others as little as possible. Try to avoid thinking about others and comparing your life to others, and try to focus more just internally on your own improvement and your own path towards whatever goal you want to achieve. Be open to failures and learn to recognize mistakes as a necessary part of any process. Nobody does everything perfectly, and nobody can achieve any sort of success without making some mistakes along the way. Consider also that mistakes represent pushing personal boundaries. If you never make mistakes, it means that you're probably not striving hard enough to try new things and challenge yourself with new experiences. It's in those areas where you make mistakes or fail sometimes where you're really experiencing true growth and development. That should be the real goal, for anything that you're trying to improve in or any area of growth that you're trying to achieve in life. Once you internalize that mindset where mistakes are tolerated and it's okay to fail sometimes, you open the world to all kinds of new experiences and growth opportunities that you may have been closed off from before. And aside from all the opportunities that opens up, it also just makes life a lot more fun.